Kortronowski, publisher of Yankee T News, coming to you on this, not Monday, but Tuesday, September 3rd, the year of our Lord 2024. We did take Labor Day off to celebrate and acknowledge the contributions of working people in our nation. Meantime, oh my goodness, where am I going to start? Tonight's going to be a little bit more experimental. We're going to try a few things we never tried before because we are trying to build our audience. That's you. So first of all, stick around, okay? So these are the things that we're going to be talking about. I don't know how well you can see them, okay? But we're going to be talking about what's happening in Colorado, the stories with Hell's Angels. We're going to be talking about the issues with ChatGPT. We're going to talk about, we're introducing another series now. I'll simply call it the Project Series. We've done a lot of stuff over the last several years. We have bodies of information in different areas that qualify as projects. And tonight there will be three. There's the Bill Gates Project, as we look at globalists. There's going to be the Kamala Harris Project, since she's running for president. And then the last is going to be the January 6th Project, which is part of our ongoing coverage. Okay, what else? Oh yeah, what's the military doing in New York City? Stranded astronauts. Maybe you want to stick around for that, and the Connecticut resource wars. Before I start that, I want to raise a rather annoying rhetorical question. Will America become a genocidal nation? Now, of course, some will leap up and immediately say, well, what did we do to the American Indians? Wasn't that genocide? Perhaps in some respects. But I think what you're going to find is that many aspects of our government and others are trying to kind of make amends. And there is a model to emulate up in Canada, so that's a whole lot of discussion. But when it comes to genocide, we can't forget what the Germans did to the Jews. And that's been the subject of study. So this is hard to see. What was the name of that guy? Stanton, Eric?
Dr. Stanton, yes.
Yes, Dr. Stanton. Okay, so this is Dr. Stanton's list, in which he identifies 10 stages of genocide. I will just start by rattling them off and saying a few things. So classification. They're saying those people, they're not like us. They're bad. And then forcing people to identify themselves as a part of that group. That would be the yellow stars that Jews wore in Germany. And then they faced systematic discrimination. Their businesses and homes were attacked. Dehumanization, as you had the German propaganda campaigns equating Jews with rats. And then you have the organization of specific groups to enforce the policies. On this, I need to pause because the worst example, somebody wrote an article about this, and you had to stop and realize, wow, this is true. He was at this Holocaust museum, and as he's looking at the exhibits, it occurs to him that it was government bureaucracies that were running genocidal extermination. Government bureaucracies, okay? The notion that a strong central government can be benign, that should be out the window. Meantime, so there's polarization, and then there's the part where the government prepares to remove people. I mean, again, if we're still following a parallel here with the Jews in Germany, you can see this happening. Beginning of murders, theft of property, trial massacres, yes, all of the above. And then we kick into gear with wholesale extermination. Now, as a footnote to wholesale extermination, the Germans were actually kind of stumbling through and arriving at a way to do this. And yeah, that speaks for itself too. And then the big part, although the German government doesn't do this, is that after the genocide is done, they deny they had anything to do with it. You know, there's the argument that in China, the communists have been exterminating the Uyghurs, and that they would deny. So there you go, as well as what they're doing to the Tibetans. So think about whether or not America's heading in this direction. The point's been made. You see these increasing attacks on conservatives. You can't help but notice some of the parallels. All right, so let me just start working through this here. The first thing, this has actually been covered periodically. So you have a group, they're called Connecticut Insider, And, you know, they asked the question, or at least I'm asking the question, is Connecticut over-unionized? Well, it turns out that Connecticut is not the most unionized state in the nation. I believe that honor goes to Hawaii, right, where 24% of the workforce is unionized. In Connecticut, it's 16, 17%. Now, that said, they point out that there's been a growth in union membership. But there's a bigger problem here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I mean, this link will be up. You can go look at it. But as we're discussing the influence of unions in Connecticut, which has been a long-standing issue and a problem, you have that we have a system for negotiating union contracts that is in serious, serious need of reform. Oh my God. The fact of the matter is that because we don't subject these contracts to public hearing and scrutiny, what you have instead is a system where the contracts are negotiated in the back room, legislature votes on it, that's it, and you move on to the next thing. And by the way, the footnote is that the legislature piggybacks its own pensions onto the union pensions. They're the same. So they're voting their own raises, they're voting their own pensions. I don't know, that sounds like conflict of interest to me, just saying. Okay, so the article is suggesting that there have been these slight changes, some drops, some rise, public union sectors, private union sectors, but they run the state, and it's still a problem, and we will continue to be ever more a backwater state in the economy so long as this continues. Now, so here's a new series, okay? We're talking about the fact that we've been doing this for several years now, and we've collected a lot of information on the different people we've covered various times. So what we're going to do is compile this information into what we describe as projects. And those different projects we'll mention as we go along. So for one that I'll call the Globalist project, we have underneath that the Bill Gates project. Now, before I get into the Bill Gates project, there's another point I want to make that I want you people to think about. And that is that there are many different types of globalists. Not all globalists are the same. And you'll find that some globalists are more prominent than others, which leads to the observation that there are major globalists and minor globalists. Now, I will be focusing later on what constitutes minor globalists. It's kind of like having generals and lieutenants in an army, all right? They all have a role to play. So, Bill Gates is clearly a major globalist. And the reason for his being a major globalist has to do with the fact that he has his fingers in so many globalist pies. Now, I put together a Venn diagram. We all like Venn diagrams, don't we, Kamala? It's not a very neat one, but we'll work through it. Okay, basically I have 4 intersecting circles: agriculture, food, health, and energy. And at the center of all 4 circles, that's right, is Bill Gates. It's Bill Gates, and also education. We could squeeze that in there, but he's backed off on education lately. So, let's start with the first one, agriculture. It's been pointed out that Bill Gates is the largest owner of land, of farmland in America, okay? And the number that is thrown out is 270,000 acres. Okay, that's a lot. His defense is, well, gee whiz, that's only 1/4,000th of all the arable land in America, really. And he points out that that amount of land equates to 1/3 the size of Rhode Island. Okay, still, he's a major landowner. Now, there is another study to be done here. We didn't get to this tonight. But Eric and I were discussing China and their ownership of land. We had in other countries, and there's quite a few. But I pointed out to him that Canada is a major owner of agricultural land in America. Canada, in a way, makes sense, okay? So you can talk about China, but don't forget Canada. And while we're talking about them, we have to put Bill Gates in the context, all these other countries owning farmland as well. So that said, the take-home message here, I think this is a reasonable defense. A lot of people have speculated, what's Gates doing? So he's going to convert farmland into these solar farms, and he's going to do all this green energy stuff, and he's going to ruin all this land. It's a way to destroy agriculture in America. Can't you see? Maybe not. Because in the article, they make a very simple point. To refer to the joke by Will Rogers, who was a comedian back in the 1930s, when he said, invest in land. They aren't making any more of it. So investors have known this for a long time, and no surprise, the value of farmland has been increasing over the last 20 years. I think one source claims, I think if you consider the last 20 years, the price of farmland has increased 6-fold, which is quite dramatic. Let's see here if I can find it. All right, I have to find it later. So the point is that as a long-term investment, by buying up farmland, you'll get a return on that investment over time. And he and the ones he's investing with may be doing that and nothing more. But we will be watching him carefully. So that's a take on him and farmland. In the meantime, he also published from, let's see here if I've got a date on this. It was a couple years ago, his Green Manifesto. I'm sorry, folks, I have read his Green Manifesto as published here in the Financial Times, and it is crap. Is he that easily fooled? Does he think that superficially is to come up with something like this? Wow. So he believes, for example, we can't afford to release more greenhouse gases. Really? Really? With all the data that we have about times in the past when carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are higher than they were today, we can't afford to release more? I don't know. And the other problem is that all of this is predicated upon our understanding of what constitutes carbon sequestration. There was a point in time where we could not account for 20% of the carbon cycle. We didn't know where it went. Had no idea. Some of the questions have been answered, but I think that there's still other parts that are a problem, especially when looking at the ocean. The way the ocean captures carbon in its different forms is not as it appears, okay? So, when he makes his statement, I don't know. He said he became interested in climate change because he's concerned about global health and development. Yeah, well, that's not what you're working on, is it, Bill? No, you're working on investment deals that are supposed to reduce carbon levels. Now, I'm going to say it. So to talk about zeroing out emissions for carbon, okay, this is a fool's errand, all right? It shows it's the same sort of statist thinking that seems to populate the minds of liberals, that now or this time period represents the best of all worlds as far as carbon levels are concerned. Yeah, and I just want to dispense with this other thing. He talks about green premiums. Give me a break. All right, it's just a nice sounding phrase, and it's just another way of making energy more expensive, perverting economies around the world. Not pleased, not pleased. Now, I don't feel like I should dwell on this entirely, but okay, he's down on planting trees because he makes the argument based on some data that the remediation that's achieved for carbon sequestration with trees is not that great. However, there's more to planting trees than that. Just saying. There was a recent piece that looked at the impact of, boy, I want to say Kenya, maybe it was Tanzania, maybe it was Algeria, I wish I could remember, but one of those sub-Saharan, I mean, Tanzania would not be sub-Saharan, but some of the others did engage in a program of extensively planting trees, bushes, and grasses. And over a 20-year period, they took areas that were absolutely arid and dry and restored them to verdant, green expanses of land. The pictures are impressive, okay? So there's clearly a benefit to following such programs, and Mr. Gates seems to be blind to that. All right, so the other part the green premium is just a bad idea. Then there was a very telling comment where he said, I've already lost more money on battery companies than I ever thought I would. Okay, anybody, and I'm going to include myself, who has studied battery technology, and every so often you have yet another fantastic announcement coming out of MIT, coming out of some government lab, coming out of another university lab, where there's some other breakthrough, energy density, discharge, compactness of the battery, you name it. Great, but every time they fail to be able to commercialize it, okay? So when it comes to commercialization of battery technology, it has a lousy track record. Doesn't mean somebody isn't going to succeed, but you have to take account of that lousy track record. And Mr. Gates failed to because, as he says, I've already lost more money on battery companies than I ever thought I would. Bill, it sounds to me like you didn't do your homework, okay? And then talking about sustainable miles of flying for aviation fuel, then when I got to the part about the cow farts, I said, enough. This so-called Green Manifesto is so poorly thought out, it's really an embarrassment. And you should start all over again, Billy Boy. You should start all over again. And speaking of...
Where have you been?
Yeah, where have you been? There's so many people who've worked on these problems for so long. Okay? Alan, you made it. Okay. They've been working for so long, and they don't... you should have some sense of what works and what doesn't work, the kind of approach you should be taking, okay? R&D culture speaks for itself. There's a concept, for example, R&D diffusion. Somebody makes a discovery, and then that idea migrates out to other R&D facilities, and they incorporate it just as a matter of course. Anyway, digital surveillance is the other one, the other finger that Bill has his pie in. And just a quick mention here, a guy named Alex Newman reported on this on One American News. And it's the whole thing about digital surveillance, digital currency. It's another thing that he's working on. What we haven't talked about here yet is the idea of a grand plan, some central idea. And the notion here is that if you're looking at energy, you're looking at food, you're looking at health, I'll say education, and then you have this system here that blends digital technology with finance, which would feed into all these things. You're looking for some central idea that explains it. If anybody has a way of explaining it, speak up. I'm waiting. All right. Now we need to get on to the next thing, and then I'm going to move more quickly here. All right. Kamala Harris. The evidence that this woman is so deeply connected to other people who have communist roles, communist influences, is just mind-boggling. So on the links that we put up, we have some of the papers that are referenced. There are others that I got a hold of later that are pretty good, and we'll try to follow up with them because we'll be reminding people about this broadcast, and then we'll make sure we're going to include the links then. Right, Eric?
That's correct.
Good, okay. Okay, so here's the one that I really like. This is from Trevor Loudon from 2020. We'll put up the link for this. And Trevor Loudon does a very clear job, and just rattle these off. He talks about Kamala's communist parents, her pro-communist boyfriend, that would be Willie Brown, her communist-affiliated protege, that would be, see if I can find her name, Simon. What was it? Latifah Simon was her protege, very much a communist. The other one here who doesn't get enough attention is a guy named Stephen Phillips, of all people. Stephen Phillips establishes that, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's true. As much as communists may hate capitalists, even communists marry for money. Yep, it's true. So what we have here is Mr. Phillips marrying, let's see if I can find it, he married into the multi-billion-dollar Sandler family Golden West savings and loan fortune. And that was the way that he had access to the resources to fund all these communist organizations. Okay, pro-communist chief of staff, communist affiliated husband. That's a lot of communists lurking around. So we should get into this more, but I want you, it is mind-boggling. And we haven't even talked about Timothy Walls yet, okay? Meantime, all the confusion around what's happening in Colorado. All right, so I was excited when I saw the rumors about the Hells Angels heading to Colorado to lay it down for the folks in Colorado. The reports, I will say, have been what are you guys doing? We have people here who have all kinds of sign language that I know nothing about. Okay. Well, thank you. All right. Is that so? All right. So all right. See, Eric is in charge of the lighting and the ambiance as well as the technology. So yes.
We got 2 minutes.
Yeah, we got idiocy number one. Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado, who himself gaslit everybody about what drug gangs are you talking about? What apartment complex? Aurora? Yeah, no, nonsense. Really. And then the mayor spoke up and he said, well, we're not really worried about them. We don't think it's a problem. The people in the buildings are from Venezuela. Maybe it's not a big deal. Yeah. And then the police chief for Aurora chimed in. He wasn't much better. Well, we have some plans. We might get around to it. This is ridiculous. All right? So I just want to add that we don't have any real new updates on whether or not Hells Angels are really going to Colorado or not. We'll let you know. Meantime, in Chicago, we do have a report of 32 armed gang members having taken over an apartment complex right there. We're waiting for Mayor Brandon to speak up on that one. Yeah, what's your excuse? Are you just going to copy what the mayor of Aurora did? And then also there was a quick piece. There's a gang in a town near Dallas, and they're boasting about how they're going to remove these drug gang members that just took over a apartment building near Dallas. So it's called, let's stay tuned on that. Meantime, conservative influencers who don't know how ChatGPT works lose it over Trump assassination response. Okay, on the one hand, okay, ChatGPT is not the final word. Can we be clear on this, okay? So that said, so many people will read things and they're expected to be current, but then the excuse is that the ChatGPT models are only trained up to October 2023. I don't know if I believe that, but that's
not true because you can ask it a variety of you can give it a variety
topical
of other
questions
that are current events,
Yeah.
and it will supply you with that
so there
information.
you go. So to Catherine Huggins, nice try, babe. Go back and fix it. We know there's a problem with ChatGPT when it comes to conservatives, and the fact that the assassination attempt is not properly covered. Quickly, the military deployed to guard a migrant hotel in New York City. Really? Why? My first reaction was that if, in fact, Trump does get sent to jail at Rikers Island, there's going to be a problem, and the National Guard will need to be in New York City. No better place to stash him than in a migrant hotel in New York City, right? So that's one thought. The other thought, when the guy said, yeah, we were brought here by the invitation of Governor Hochul. Okay, yeah, well, we'll see. I am skeptical. Meantime, the other problem is the resource wars in Connecticut. Have we got this here? The resource wars. Okay, we have a fight still going on, ladies and gentlemen, over the power bill and that ridiculous public benefits charge. Okay, at this point, to the best of my knowledge, let's put it this way, a week ago, the online petition was around 40,000. It's now over 60,000 and growing. At some point, the governor will have to pay attention, but right now, all he can do is find the nearest rock to hide under. You should be ashamed of yourself, Lamont. And that goes for the legislature, too. And it gets worse than that. All right, so there's that part. The other part of the resource war in Connecticut is over this proposed acquisition of a water company called Aquarion by the Regional Water Authority. I'm still learning about these people, the Regional Water Authority. To me, it just sounds like a bad idea. The chairman of the Regional Water Authorities made the usual pitch. We'll lower costs, we'll reduce duplication, blah, blah, blah. Meantime, RWA has a lousy reputation. It's not a well-run organization. So you take a well-run organization and put it under the control of a poorly run organization. Makes sense. All right, I'm going to just try to jump to this. The problem has been that the Supreme Court ruled in the Fisher ruling, I guess, that the government must establish that the defendant impaired the availability or integrity for use in an official proceeding of record documents, objects, or other things used in that official proceeding. Meantime, okay, so because of that, now this is supposedly going to take away an obstruction charge the Department of Justice was trying to impose on these January 6 people. Guess what? They don't care. So you just rephrase your complaint and make the penalties even more punishing.
We're at about 5% battery, so we're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay. Do you have a comment on this, Alan? The January 6th thing? No? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is FUBAR, fakakta, okay?
Other than
Yeah.
Darden has said that you will not question anything we do.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll see how long that works.
The winner is you will not question the winner, and if you do, we will prosecute you for asking questions.
There you go. So the last comment here is, before the battery dies, scene from that movie True Lies, stranded astronauts hearing strange noises while NASA makes a word salad. Oh, they're not stranded. It's just extended stay. Yeah, right. Okay, check out the piece on the rise of incompetence that I wrote. We'll be putting that around. This is part of it. In the meantime, we'll see you next week.